Late Night Thoughts, hosted by yours truly, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Tonight's show, the big what if. What if he really actually is the really actually true Messiah? Crazy question, right, folks? Crazy question. What if? What if? And it has been keeping me up at night. Keeping me up at night a little bit harder than I let on, even to the people who know that I don't sleep well at night. My fear is simultaneously an irrational fear, and I'll totally acknowledge it. Truly is an irrational fear. And it is also simultaneously its own inverted truth. It is a completely, totally rational fear that I have. That somehow I live in the universe in which the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, is also somehow, impossibly, the Messiah. Sidebar, if you got yourself that Netflix and you haven't seen the TV show of the same title, Messiah, thumbs up, double thumbs up, multiple thumbs up. Strongly recommend it. It's an interesting, trippy, thought-provoking show that each and every episode, is both approachable, accessible, and doesn't too horribly offend anybody from any one particular camp or all three, but also makes you question what's going on and what does it mean and what is this character doing, Do you find out if he's actually a robot from the future sent here to warn them? We better not. They better not keep grinding away at it for 12 seasons and then at the end steal my robot from the future thing, because, it's not really my robot from the future thing. In other words, I didn't come up with it. I can't claim originality. In fact, please, Terminator lineage, don't sue me. I am a non personhood status, lifelike animate object, inanimate. No, I'm still working with a translator for a good term. Welcome, friends, to Late Night Thoughts. Tonight, what if Donald Trump is actually a Chinese robot that's malfunctioning? No, that's next week's episode. This week, no, seriously, there's a lot of crazy things people have posited about Donald Trump from long before he ran for office. And the one that has always been the most bizarre sounding to me in its obvious self-contradiction has been the various flavors of Messiah status attribution, folklore, psyop, whichever it is, that seems to be floating around the wake of this actual person in the actual White House, right? And I don't say that to offend anybody. I'm just confused by it. And it really freaks me out a little bit. But today's episode is supposed to be not about complaining about it. I'm not here to put down or insult anybody who believes it. Right? I'm not here to mock and ridicule any of the groups that have stuck to this idea from whenever it is they decided that it was true. I'm here to ask, in the deeply frightening way, like, what if it is? What then? What happens? What would that be like? How long would that last? And what would I personally actually do about it in factual terms? Those are all really hard questions to answer. Let me assure you, dear friends. And I do not take them lightly, although laughter is the best medicine, and I can't help but over-identify with the Gotham City of Batman and Joker lore. That world has always been that city as a like crumbling paragon, a once beautiful shining city on a hill, now tarnished and so in disrepair and so deep in corruption that mad men roam the streets willy-nilly, right? I'm not referencing that movie in particular and necessarily already did that. If you haven't seen it, obviously you should. And I'm not pretending to be some influencer in that regard. Like, people have already formed their opinions. I want to see if there's been any commentary about like the disagreement, what factions are forming in reaction to that film. But I digress. What would day-to-day life turn into in the long run? Like 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out? What would it turn into if Donald Trump was really some sort of Donald Trump messiah and sort of half-assed some sort of messiah thing, presidency, war, mini-apocalypse, and then established, a Trumptopia divine empire on Earth and proceeded to be Trump? Exactly as Trump is, like the crazy, two-faced, I'll swindle you looking this way and I'll swindle you coming back the other way too. The brain explodes. What would it mean? Because people say that he is God's chosen. Those people, to the best of my knowledge, and mind you, I haven't met very many of these people face to face. I would love to be part of a production crew and be doing a documentary across the country right now. And anybody with money and a budget and a film crew who's like, who would do this? Me, hire me, let's go. I think this would be an amazing documentary to do like a 3-week tour or a 9-week tour. 9, because 9's great, like, it echoes 9 months. It's full completion. You can go really in depth. So a 9-week driving, podcasting live, and also for posterity, but film, documentary, interview thing with the question of, we're not here to judge anybody, but do you think Donald Trump could be or could not possibly be the actual literal biblical Messiah? Question mark. And let people just talk for however long they want to talk. And archive that, because America and history deserves that archive project. People will be writing theses about it for millennia. Because it's real, right? Like, it's not just pretend. It isn't just some dorky guy in some deep red state that really loves Trump that's saying it kind of jokingly. Haha, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Lev Parnas, in that tape that he released, which I have a copy of, sort of, not really, I pretend, I made a probably not very legal personal recording of it, which I don't remember if I have or have not irrationally posted to my podcast under the guise of like, I was not awake, I did it in my sleep. Because I will like wake up in the middle of the night and like think I know what I'm doing and then post stuff. And thank God I've never posted, like things that would be horrible to have posted. But why am I talking about that? My point is, I don't remember right now if I posted the audio grab of Lev Parnas's tape being aired on live television. And I'm like that lady that they just did a documentary about, Recorder. I still haven't seen it, but go see it, people. Go be, and tell them Mr. Zeppo, the online podcast influencer, told you to see it sight unseen. Because of the article, the audio article I heard on NPR, associated to, but not, I don't know, it was like the same people who did it, but they did a special feature on this lady, and she just recorded news for archival purposes because they don't keep it, right? Like they only keep X amount of footage, and then most of the tape gets recycled because tape's expensive, etc., etc. So this lady was an archivist of like unorthodox, dare I say, divine inspiration. Like no one in government, no one in industry asked her or paid her to do this project. She did well by herself in investments and had the wherewithal to be able to fund herself that way, which I do not. And I'm not interested in a class. Thank you very much. Too old for that now, I believe. Or I'd rather do it my own way. But long story short, go see this documentary. It sounds awesome based on the article I heard about the same person, and mentioning the fact that there's a documentary about her. And I feel inspired in some way by this individual whose name I totally do not have at the tip of my tongue right now, and will insert here later in post-production, but that to sort of like wrap that up and move on, what was inspiring about that was that she not only was just like blindly obsessive compulsive about it, she developed a thesis and really gave humanity a gift, because now apparently, actually, I've been meaning to look that up. I need to look that up. The Internet Archive, or just Internet Archive, that organization, which is it is a .org, right, as a nonprofit, and they are internet archiving, transfer film, capturing all of her footage of recorded off of live television, totally, kind of in violation of content protection law of live television, but she never profited off of it, right? She just harvested it all and stockpiled it for the purposes of posterity. And she then developed, using her wide-reaching depth of content, research certain conclusions about television, journalism, etc., and corporate media, which are probably very influential in our current day milieu. Dissatisfaction / anger at media, which I'm not a big like anti-media guy. Obviously, I'm trying to be a media guy. We should treat media entities and media personalities like we treat politicians to a certain degree. That we should all, if we're going to be in public life, we should, own up to our failings and do our best to not be corrupt and hold ourselves accountable to corruption in action, right? No one pays me to perpetuate any of the ideas I express in my podcast. Am I being bombarded by content all around me long before the internet existed, shaping my consciousness to some degree, dare I say, in an attempt to program me? Absolutely. Everyone was. Whether it was overt or covert or on purpose or by accident. You can't be a living person and not have been inundated by cultural conditioning, cultural programming, neuro-linguistic activations and triggers and cycles and feedback loops and all kinds of stuff getting shoved into your brain. That just happens, right? Like that's par for the course of being alive, whether or not there is an internet, whether or not it's now or 1700. For as long as we've had society, we've had societal encodification of norm and protocol and thought process and, taboo, etc., et al. So here we are discussing the depths and profundities of those kinds of things. And I beg you the question, what kind of craziness would happen if suddenly for realsies, Trump was some kind of messiah? As he is in that avatar, in that body, in that individual visage or carriage, and here to do somehow the Lord's benighted work in the name of some sloppy ass, lecherous, the words fail. I'm not even, because I don't want to be accused of bad-mouthing anybody or maligning anyone. But it is within my free rights, I think, to say that President Trump has a proven record of not telling the truth, of scamming and cheating businesses and employees and government agencies, and is doing one hell of a bang-up job of bringing about some sort of Trump dynasty of creepy weirdness. No offense. We could either all stand by and idly watch it erect itself, or we can talk about it, air it out, send them healing vibe and energy, treat them like human beings that are not super malicious evil demons, nor are they any more special, precious, divine, better than divine than any of us, because quite frankly, as I've said before, and I'll have to always sort of pin to it's one of those things I gotta say again and in the future. It's spiritually speaking, the only thesis that I humbly propose to you makes the most sense is that it's all of us or none of us, special and divine, right? It can't be that only some are going to be empowered by divine light, divine truth. I don't think that any of the teachings point to that, right? I think all of the teachings, from my humble reading, point to an inclusivity and diversity and plurality. The plurality of man is the body of Christ, right? The totality of the human species is the being of Buddha. I could be wrong. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of that helps counterbalance my mind slowly melting when I try to face the dangerous boiling pot of scary that is the question at hand. What if? I'm not even addressing that, right? I'm just skirting around it. It's so dramatizing. Let's take a mini musical break to purge and cleanse the palate, and then return to question as prompted. Hang tight as you listen to the middle beat of Basta Ya Dance feat Electro 101 I2, DJ Zed, Purple Mush, and the Political Outrage. What does that word mean? Messiah. If you ask dictionary.com, don't sue me, guys. I'm just going to do that every time I reference something that I read on the... This is me asking you, dictionary.com, for permission to read from your Google result for Messiah. Messiah. And mind you, I've got some commentary about this postmodern definition. Messiah. Pronunciation in parentheses and brackets, which is kind of neat. I'm going to steal that visuographically, like typographically, for something, but got nothing to do with nothing. Just pointing that out because I'm a nerd. And then literally, don't sue me, nobody. This is what dictionary.com says. For Jews, and then parentheses, see also Jews, and parentheses. I guess that's a link there for definition of Jews in dictionary.com. And Christians, parentheses, see also Christian, and parentheses, the promised, quote, anointed one, or Christ, not asterisk, what is that? Semicolon, the Savior, period, right? And then it goes on to explain it in sort of a more natural language. The Christians believe that Jesus was the Messiah who delivered mankind from its sins. Jews believe that the Messiah has not yet come. Okay. Now, at cursory glance, you get a binary. These people believe it's already happened. These people believe it doesn't happen. It means this guy that's going to do this thing. But how and when did it become that is an important question that must, for anyone who's serious about spiritual seeking, must be looked into. You can't just easy breezy ignore that kind of thing. The normative definition, the traditional Judeo-Christian definition, gives it a Hebrew origin and it meaning anointed. But that's not, like, anointed means having had oils in sacred ritual, blessed upon you. Physically. It means that you had done it. You had committed this ritual. You had participated in an anointing of some special kind, of some special order. So the way that it is commonly used in popular talk now, in the way, along the same way that I argue, which tends to piss people off a little bit, and I don't mean it to, so please forgive me in advance, right? It's all about forgiveness no matter which perspective you start from. But people will say that Jesus Christ is his name. And I'm sorry, but no, that's not at all true in any way, shape, or form. At a very technical level, we don't know the name of the person that was called by the titles Yeshua Christos. And it is important and critical to understand. I say this not as a judgment or a denouncement, but as a statement of like questioning. How many postmodern followers of Christianity or Judeo-Christianity in general, especially sort of like the lay non-practitioners of some variation of either of those two, many of them ever really looked into those words in depth to try to understand them? I wouldn't have, probably, if it hadn't have been pointed out to me by various other people and events that it might be interesting and significant to come to an understanding of that. At the time of Christ's crucifixion, there were many Christoses about being crucified by the Roman state. And so what does that mean? How does that apply to today's moment? What am I trying to get at? Am I just trying to ramble about these words until someone gets me into some viral share trend over what comes out of my mouth? No. I mean, not on purpose, right? It's always important to dig deeper. Like, personally right now, I'm not claiming to know what the origin of the word Messiah is any deeper than what we just read on obabynames.com and their search result on Google, right? None of those companies, please sue me, don't thank you. But I'm sure that we can probably ask like an anthropologist and an ancient language scientist and go, hey, are there words that have this connotation or have a direct relationship to this word in older languages like Sanskrit and others? Can we look before the Tower of Babel in history and see like what's going on with that word, if other countries have the same sort of concept at a purely conceptual level of an anointed one that will come to the chosen people and spread the magic words around? Because really, like, how? I have a hard time intellectually giving any credence and any credibility to the concept that human beings can simultaneously claim to believe, agree with, understand, and try to practice the teachings of Yeshua Christos, and also can assert simultaneously that they have chosen now, for various reasons, to believe that Donald J. Trump is the Messiah. That's a hard, people are going to say, that's a hard pill to swallow, right? Like, you really, and some people really believe already in America. I've sort of seen people at least express the idea that, it's my president, my God, why can't it be my prophecy? And that's a powerful thing. And this is why the question keeps me up at night. And I think should anyone else that is reasonably attempting to be a real, honest human being first and foremost, right? We've got to be real, genuine, authentic human beings self-radicalized for peace and the empowerment and uplifting of all other human beings. That's the big pain in the ass challenge. That's what we're stuck here trying to do. That's what anybody who could be considered a contender in the spiritual realm for like the first coming of any messiahs, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, whoever you like. There's a lot of names that are supposed to be super deluxe, spiritual ones with all kinds of mystic mojo and lots of deep, deep insight into how the universe works. And if we take those things and secularly analyze them without trying to debunk them, without an agenda to destroy them, you get a lot of interesting and very complex findings, right? So my rational mind laughs at the irrational fear, as I pointed out, of Donald Trump possibly being the Messiah. Because rationally, that's very unlikely, given a clear, perceptive, balanced, judicious understanding of the documents commonly referred to as the Bible. It's incredibly unlikely. If there's truth in the Bible, then Donald Trump's doing everything wrong. Or as somebody I heard once say, he's closer to the Antichrist than Messiah. That one. Not going to call that person out. But somebody I personally was in the same room with said that quite boldly and unashamedly. And I couldn't help but giggle and be like, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably more right than anybody who thinks he is the Messiah. For a bunch of technical reasons. Like, by definition, the Messiah is anointed and selected and special because they are blessed with humble purity and alignment with the will of God. And I don't know, and of course I totally understand that I could be wrong, big giant asterisks for disclaimer about that, but I don't know that if the people we indicate with the label Jesus Christ, Yeshua Christos, and that divinity that we label with the common tag we all usually just call God, if those two showed up, just like teleported down right now and hung out with me in my recording studio, and I asked them, so, you sent us Donald Trump as Messiah? I think they would politely decline that association. Because in practical terms, this guy is toxic. And anybody that isn't caught up with the fanatical cult of personality, which theoretically would explain this blind adherence to a man who's a living, breathing example of what it's like to completely radically fail at what it means to be a good Christian. No offense. But for those out there trying to do the mental gymnastics to turn Donald Trump into a good Christian, you really got a skewed, messed up, squirrely take on what Yeshua Christos was here doing on earth and what they taught. But that would be a whole nother long episode, which I would be happy to come back and do. So that's what keeps me sane in face of that question. But what would it be like? That's still so bizarre and incalculably Trump that it's difficult for me to imagine at times. But the fun thing is, I'm taking artistic license, as you may or may not already know. And vis-a-vis my podcast and other conversations that I may or may not record with the people I have them with, and of course, always with their consent and predetermined awareness. I'm developing a fictional world that if I had to clear one name and be like, this was a seminal influence, and this inspired me to write my dystopian, warning about the onset of despotic tyranny, of self-control or self-oppression. 1984, right? Which I would love to be like a book that somehow secretly some people own physical copies of, despite it having been banned and purged from the world. And if you've never read 1984, read it. Read it now. Read it now and understand what it's saying. Now, and no one's paying me to say that, so no one better sue me for saying it. In a sane, rational world where it might be true that the truth in the Bible is the truth that will set us free, the corruptions in the Bible are the corruptions that will awaken us to our own systemic corruption, then all else being fair and equal, all playing fields being squared off, Trump's not the Messiah, right? Like, that's not how, he's not doing and being what was taught. If you clear away all the gunk and the lies and the screwy bits, and you look at what we can look at, if any of them were, they wouldn't be spending millions and millions and billions and billions of dollars on out and out public marketing propaganda to seduce you into voting them back into power. They would all be feeding the hungry, healing the sick, housing the homeless, like Jesus did with those billions of dollars. Not one of them is. Not one of them out there that I'm aware of. Of course, plenty of them give to charity. Let's not get absolutist in our thinking. But neither Donald Trump nor Mike Bloomberg are currently actively, selflessly doing Christ's work. They're being politicians. I hope that doesn't count as defamation because, I'm not pretending to be a Christian either, right? Like, I categorically don't belong to any of those organized religions. But unable to try... Well, first of all, I want to to stipulate, right, that like the dystopian future I envision is going to be tempered by a sense of humor, I hope, because I'm funnier on paper than I am on the radio, and tempered by a real satirist's and contemporary critics' critique of the world as perceived by this talking meat sack, known to those of you listening as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. All of the opinions expressed herein are, of course, inherently my actual opinions. And the music I'm playing on today's episode, Basta Ya Dance, featuring Electro 101 I Do. That's DJ Zed, me, alter ego. And Purple Haze and the Political Craze, which will be dropping soon actually on Bandcamp once I get my act together and put the tracks that I know I've already played on the podcast into an album. But you know, baby steps. If you dig the jams, which are really, I've got to admit, right, like I've just cobbled together using, you know, the electronic applications that give you tones and sounds and rhythms to play with, to use at your own thing. I think I'm allowed to you know, call them my music and play them and post them on the interwebs as such, but I'll make sure to double, quadruple check. But I actually did mix and produce this track, and I'm remixing and producing it sort of semi-live now as we break it up into chunks and only hear bits of it in between sections of me rambling about stuff. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for welcoming me into your inner headspace on these interesting journeys of thinky thoughts and self-expression. I wanted to share something that seems at first perhaps unrelated, but I think correlates, given the what if question that even I was like overwhelmed and daunted to not even be able to give a good answer to. What if? I live in constant shock that could even possibly be true, right? I don't just mean, and forgive me, like I'm not bashing Trump. I won't be surprised at all if he takes the White House. I in fact kind of suspect that he is really playing his cards pretty strongly. The cards that are being dealt politically, the hand that he is building right now with these last few rounds before November, he's got strong odds of like pulling a royal flush, whatever that fanciest, biggest card hand is. Don't sue me, poker. Poker, don't sue me. I'm not doubting that whatsoever, and I'm not making an argument of worthiness or deservedness or whatever. I'm shocked at a whole other level, right? Like that people can take the sentence Donald J. Trump is the Messiah seriously. Like, take the sentence earnestly, as in, like, it could fit their worldview. And I don't mean to say that I believe them all to be automatically inherently wrong. I just doubt that they're all automatically inherently right about that. But as always, I could be wrong. And I guess that's why I continue to struggle and continue to stay up late at night, many nights in a row. This is only the the first time I've sat and tried to express this particular facet of it this directly and tackle with it. Like, my brain staggers at the visions of like Trumpopian, totalitarian, religious cult of personality-ism and what it might look like in 10 years, in 30 years, in 60 years, in 110 years. What is that? What would it morph into? What would it produce and render? What kind of planet will we be on? And my mind just staggers. Not that it's not incapable of coming up with imagery, but rather that it comes up with so much imagery and it's scary AF. In part because all of that could come true. The frightening vision of like icky Trump skin-colored orange buildings in epic Blade Runner-esque, statuesque, proportions. And the dark, despairing, concrete constructs of regime, with the deep love for oppressive vaulting ceilings and all that madness that could evolve. Given the directions we're facing now, the directions and momentums we're developing now as a society, that sounds crazy. And on top of it all, like, what's going to happen? Like, Trump, 45 years from now, 45 years from today, I'm as I sit here living and breathing in front of you, I am 44 years old. So 44 years from now, I will be 88. And it is not impossible that I might be still pretty lucid and in pretty great condition, thinking about how many people in Congress are in their 80s. How many people, making weird, crazy, deep, life-impacting decisions that are disastrous for huge swaths of the population are in their 80s. If I live to that, I mean, the part of that, that really, really kind of digs in under the skin is that while we'll be distracted by all of this ontology of the Church of Trump and the state of Trumptopia, no one will see the robots coming. And the robots are literally coming. Trump Messiah versus cybernetic living organisms from the future. Would you watch that cartoon? I would.